The following is not meant to serve as medical advice. It's merely the story of my own journey and learning process. All the Unexpected, Season 2, Episode 4, An Abundance of Joy. Hello, and thank you for joining us again. I'm rather excited. Today is a very special episode, and it is in honor of Mother's Day, and it is in honor of the joy of motherhood. And essentially, I decided to bring some other voices on board, and I thought it would be really interesting to get a group of mothers together, virtually in the together sense, and pose a question to them about motherhood that was sort of rather broad and rather general, and see where that took us and see where their responses were. And it was really wonderful to hear so many different responses, but at the same time, it was also very interesting that there were so many similarities and so many currents and themes that sort of ran across the gamut of everyone's responses. So a few weeks ago, I sent out this prompt to quite a few mothers I know, and in the end, the group you'll hear from next are those who responded and took the time out, and so thank you to them for making this possible. And so I posed the question to these mothers, and it was, what for you has been the greatest joy of motherhood? And it was interesting where that took a lot of people in different places and in different directions. And so one of the kind of central themes that I noticed from a lot of people was that there was a very profound and deep joy in watching children come into their own. And I chose a cross-section of people because I wanted to hear from those who still had young children, those who'd raised children, even a couple of people with grandchildren of their own, right? Because it's different, this perspective on motherhood, as you are in the thick of raising young children, or that you've taken some step back and kind of had time to reflect on that period in their lives. And so it was interesting to see that from mothers who both still had young children, some who were older and some who were already adults, right, had this similarity in response, and that was that there was great joy in watching a child become their own person, come into their own, and so form interests in things and explore those interests and really sort of strike out into the world on their own. And that joy was really based in the idea that as mothers, we create these small people, right? We are responsible for nourishing and nurturing them, and then we sort of send them out into the world and watch them absorb it and grow and have passions and have interests, and that there is such a great joy in watching that in the everyday as it continues to develop, as it continues to form itself into the things that they pursue and they find passion in and they love. And so that was so interesting to hear that it became such an essential thing regardless of the children's ages.
I think the greatest joy for me has been those moments when I just stop and I watch my kids. They're like doing their thing. being kind or curious or funny. And I think they're going to put that energy and love and creativity out there in the world. And that makes me so happy.
The greatest joy of motherhood is hearing the laughter and seeing the constant smiles on both my sons' faces. It's also listening to them and seeing them become their own person while watching how they perceive and interact with the world. It's experiencing pure, unfiltered love and not wanting to trade a second of your current life for any part of your past.
And so that we see this theme reoccurring even in parents who have older children and they're watching them grow into different and more mature pursuits and things that are sort of outside of the family unit and outside of the home.
The greatest joy of motherhood has been watching my children become who they were meant to be. When my oldest was born, I couldn't even believe that I had created this beautiful being. It was very, very surreal. And to watch her discover the world and be amazed by it, and be amazed by herself and what she could do. Her very first passion was dinosaurs, and we bought every dinosaur book and every dinosaur creature you could possibly have. She had a huge dinosaur party when she was 6 years old, and that passion kind of fell onto animals, and she watched every show, and we listened to her tell us all the facts that she had learned and took her to every event that we could possibly find. And watching that excitement in her eyes as she discovered her passion. And now she tells me about things that she has found on Minecraft and things she's learned, and shows me her sticker book creations, and I can hardly believe it now that she's a teenager, but seeing her become who she is and become confident in this person. My second daughter loves makeup and science and shopping and buying her all her makeup and all her toys and taking her shopping, and she loves people and she loves to be out. So for me, it's been a challenge but a joy to really nurture that and find ways to help her become her, and then to sit back and to watch that and to be able to be a part of that, and that they want me to be a part of that, and that they ask me to be a part of it. And my little one, of course, is still in an age where she wants to be with us all the time, whereas the older ones are kind of finding themselves. And she is so funny and tells us all these jokes, even though sometimes they are maybe not the most appropriate jokes. But she's just so funny, and it's just amazing for me to see their very, very different personalities and the people that they're becoming. And I just feel so fortunate to be a part of that and to be a part of their lives. And that for me is the greatest joy of motherhood.
Having triplets at 32 weeks gestation and seeing them now grow up to be so passionate and productive at 20 has been my greatest joy of motherhood. I can't tell you how much I love these three amazing human beings. They are my everything, and they make me so proud every day.
One of the other things that was interesting that came to mind for a couple of people who responded, and I suppose it's very natural because this was the idea of something for Mother's Day, right? And so a couple of people spoke about their own relationship watching their mothers themselves with their children. And it is such an interesting thing because as we become mothers, it inevitably changes our roles as children, right? And so there's a whole new dynamic when you are no longer just simply your mother's child, but now someone else's mother, right? And being blessed enough to have that intergenerational experience and to watch your own mother now become a grandmother, I think for many people is an incredibly special and fascinating privilege, because it is a new role for both you and for her, and there is a depth to this. And so I read something recently, and I suppose I read it a while ago, but it pops up, and it's the reminder of how special the relationship of those three generations is. And so that a woman, when she is born, is already carrying all of the eggs, right, she will ever make. And so that when you were born, right, you are essentially carrying, the egg that you will make your child from, meaning that you carried those eggs in your mother's womb as well. And so it's this idea that by the sort of awe-inspiring beauty of nature, your mother, yourself, and your daughter, in that very special trifecta of three generations of women, have been connected from the beginning of your life, right? And it is such a deep and wonderful idea. And so to think about that genesis of that relationship and how it translates into watching our own children with our own mothers, I thought was really, it's a very beautiful thought.
So what a grand question. What has been, for me, the greatest joy of motherhood? I think that it's such a broad question, so I'll try and answer it as best as I can. For the first thing I want to say is the relationship that my mom has with my children is awesome to watch. And I don't know why it's awesome to watch, it just is. And I can't say she's very different than how she was with us, but I just think it's such a beautiful thing to see how much love there is with her grandbabies and my children and how much love they have for her. And then the second thing is, because I have two children now, one is almost 6, the other one is almost 2. So seeing my son, who is turning 6 soon, just grow into this little beautiful, fabulous person is amazing to watch. And my 2-year-old is seeing what little character she is. Like, it's just the greatest joy is seeing these people who you know so well excite you and shock you daily with how they look, how they behave, the things that they say. Some good, some bad, but it's just an incredible thing to watch. So yeah, I think that. Does that even make sense?
But at the same time, we can't overlook what happens when you become a mother and your own mother is not there. And I think for many women, that sense of a Mother's Day as a mother without your own mother is very bittersweet, right? And so that you are now in a position to celebrate this holiday, right? To celebrate Mother's Day and to be involved in all of the aspects, and the commercialism aside and all of the things that we associate, but really just the idea of a day that's honoring mothers in whichever way it manifests itself for you is still, something that most of us observe in one way or another, right? And so that to be a mother now and to not have your own there, I think is something that speaks to a lot of people, and we have to hold a place for that.
I think that the biggest joy of motherhood is just literally that. It's the joy. It's the joy of like having your little one put their arms around your neck and hold you and touch your face and say they love you or hold your hand or want you to cuddle them. It's the joy of like driving home from a long day of work and knowing that you're about to see them, and that like anticipation that you feel, just like this like excited, anxious, just this like ache in your heart because you've been away from them for so long and you just want to smell them and touch your forehead to their forehead and give them a kiss and tell them you love them and hold them. It's the joy. It's just the joy of having a family and feeling like you are a family unit and knowing that you have each other's back. Seeing your partner in your kid and yourself in your kid. I always tell my kids that I'm sad when they're sad and I'm happy when they're happy. And I think that, feeling each other's pain is a really real thing in motherhood. People describe motherhood or describe, your child as your literal heart living outside of your body. And it's true. When my kid is sad, I'm sad. And when my kid is full of joy and laughter, I'm full of joy and laughter. You feel their pain. And it's just a really beautiful, joyous thing to be that connected to another human being and be that connected to each other as a family. So lots of joys in motherhood. I think it's also important to talk about how motherhood is so universal and so generational. But that one of the biggest struggles in motherhood is just me not having my mother. So Mother's Day is a hard day for me because although there's so much joy in being a mother every single day, my kids make me laugh every single day. The actual day of Mother's Day is super hard for me because I'm just thinking of my mother and how much more rich my life and my motherhood would be to have her in my life and in my kids' life as a support. I think that, you're on your own a lot in motherhood, and that it's really important to have mother mentors, people that have a similar philosophy around motherhood that you can talk to and talk things out with. And I feel really acutely on Mother's Day the loss of having that with my own mother. So Mother's Day is complicated, but motherhood is really beautiful, and I feel really lucky to be in the Mama Club.
I think one of the other themes that many of the women spoke to was this idea of watching them continue to develop and have the ability to do things that they once couldn't, right? And with small children, right, it becomes a kind of daily basis, right? And so, you go from saying they couldn't roll over and one day they roll over and then you blink and the next day they sit up and you blink and the next day they walk and you blink again and they're talking and they're eating and they're going to school, right? And it sort of flies by in this rapid succession of them learning to do things and having these firsts. And there's, I think for many mothers, such great joy in watching this independence that you fostered, right? And you encouraged and you nurtured flourish and come to life. And so for different mothers, it looks somewhat different, right? But I think there's really a very universal truth to how profound it is to watch a child kind of come into their own.
If you ask me what is my greatest joy of motherhood, it would be hard for me to just choose one because there are so many. But as I sat here and thought about it, I would think that the joy and the sense of accomplishment that I could see in her face when she had been able to do something for herself on her own without needing assistance is probably one of the biggest. But if I look back today and I look at her now as a grown woman, I smile because I can see small pieces of me in her. And that, I think, would be one of my biggest joys today.
And then I think we need to hold a space also for the fact that for some milestones we all arrive at them differently, and we all come to different places at different times, and that there is great joy for some mothers in things that would be very ordinary for others, right? And so, you imagine sometimes, you see these videos of the children born with hearing defects, and then, at 2 years old, a surgery happens, right? And they can hear for the first time, and the sheer joy in the child's face when, the device is turned on, and the parents. And so that for that family, right, that simple milestone that we, with other infants might just take for granted becomes something very profound. And so I think there is something deeply personal and deeply individual about what it means for a child to come into their own and to do something new.
My greatest joy of motherhood has to be watching my son gain the ability to express himself and speak. He is on the autism spectrum, high functioning, and so he was a late bloomer when it comes to speech. And it's just been amazing to be able to see him go from, only having a few words in his vocabulary around the age of 3 to being 4 years old and just blossoming and being able to express himself in full sentences and hold conversation and, be able to tell me about his day in detail. It just really warms my heart. It's becomes a little scary wondering, okay, when are they going to talk? What are they going to say once they're able to express themselves? And, just simple little things like I love you, mommy, and I miss you, mommy, or you're beautiful, mommy, or I'm hungry, mommy, it's been such a joy to just watch him go from being a baby to, a toddler to now a little kid. And it's just really, it's a blessing. Children are a blessing, and watching them gain a voice it's incredible. So that has to be one of my greatest joys of motherhood.
I think one of the most sort of well-articulated thoughts in this whole thing was this next clip that speaks to the great joy that there is in the unconditional love of a child, right? And that you simply existing in the role as their mother is in itself the most simple and simultaneously the most profound of joys.
One of the biggest joys of being a mother is being present to life, being forced to be present to life. And in doing so, literally every day, there is something that happens while watching him, while interacting with him, that literally inspires just complete awe and joy at just the awesomeness and the miracle of life. It really makes me understand what a gift it is to be alive and how important it is to try and show up every day, living it as fully as possible, right? But literally every day, my child does something that makes me think about the awesomeness, the beauty, the mystery, the miracle, and the magic of being alive. Every day, there is something that just inspires complete awe in me and joy, like heart-bursting joy. And that has been one of the biggest gifts so far these past 2 years, almost 2 years. That was another gift that has happened by becoming a mother, starting around the time that my son was, I would say like 4 months. Every time I walked into a room, he just was tracking me. It was like a laser beam focused tracking. I entered the room and he just watched me wherever I went, until I focused on him or picked him up. When I noticed those moments and when I understood what was going on, I wasn't doing anything except existing. I wasn't doing anything except just being myself. And in relation to my son, I was being his mom, right? But being his mom, I wasn't being his mom because I was, you know, doing cartwheels or twirling or creating like amazing, art projects. I literally just, for him, being his mom just meant being present to being with him. I didn't have to do anything else except show up and be present to him. It was and it has been a real joy just to have the experience of being like, I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I don't have to do anything except show up every day fully to this life experience and just be myself. And that has been one of the biggest joys and biggest gifts of being a mother, which in a lot of ways is really the gift of unconditional love and really understanding what that means. And because I just have that automatically for my child. He doesn't have to be anything or do anything for me to always love him. And the gift and the joy is seeing that that is the case for myself as well.
And so after I took the time to really listen to everyone else's responses, I thought it only fair, as I used to do when I was a teacher, if I ask you to do something, I should have to do it myself, right? And so I kind of had really thought about it as a very simple question. And when I sat down to kind of take the time to answer the question myself, right, I found that it isn't necessarily that simple, right? It is a question that evokes many different feelings, sort of even depending, I guess, on what time of day you'd ask someone. So that, very early in the morning when you get that first smile hello, there is a sort of wash of joy over you, and just once again that simplicity of a child seeing their mother, seeing you and smiling because you're there, right? Because they woke up and you're there to pick them up and to say good morning and to simply be that person that they know will always be there in that moment. And so, does that same joy exist at 9 p.m. after, toddlers refuse to nap all day? I think we could be all fair and say that it ebbs and flows, and there are sort of, I think, both temporary joys and there are lasting ones, right? And I think some of the most lasting ones, right, are the continued joy in the everyday, right? In the simplicity of a toddler giving you a hug. And, for me as a mother, it's a really special time because I'm watching my daughter go from being a baby, right, and being born weighing 1.5 pounds and not even being able to hold her for the first 57 days of her life, right, and just watch her and not even have the ability to embrace, to now she's 2 years old and she comes over and she gives you a hug and she says hug and she's excited and she bounds over to you and sometimes jumps on top of you even with something in your lap already, and is so enthusiastic. And it is the greatest of joys for me to know that we started the way that we did, and here we are, and this whole tiny person who, isn't a preemie, isn't an infant, isn't a baby anymore, but is this, small, tiny, giant ball of energy. And she takes great joy in showing that she loves me and that I am important to her, and she hugs me and she gives you a little kiss and she walks away and goes back to what she's doing. But there is such an immense joy in really that brief moment of connection as it comes to you in the middle of generally what is an otherwise chaotic day. And I think that speaks to the lasting joy that comes in the everyday changes, right? And so that I have the incredible privilege of watching this tiny person come into her own, right? And that with each passing day, she learns a new word or color or letter or shape. And it is just sort of mind-blowing to watch that independence continue to grow and continue to flourish as she finds herself in the things she loves and the things she doesn't love, right? Because all of that is this development of this personality and of this person that's coming into her own. And it is such a privilege and such a joy to be witness to that. And so I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And I would love to hear from anyone else who'd like to comment on how is it and where is it that they find joy in their own experience as mothers. And so we can be reached, as always, via the website at www.alltheunexpected.com, alltheunexpected.com, or on your socials via Facebook or Instagram, the same, All the Unexpected. And so wishing all of you the most joyous and happy Mother's Day. Thank you, and be well.